brand. PreSonus. The mics are Audio-Technica. I can send you the link.
Please do.
It's a whole kit.
Okay.
It's just, like, everything came together.
Do you mind me asking how much it was?
$250.
That's it?
Yeah.
For everything?
Yeah.
The mics, everything?
For the mics, for the one set of headphones, I got a second one, but I haven't gotten a splitter yet. Yeah, for this, and it included 6 months of the software for free, which is Studio One.
And do you use your headphones the entire time?
I do, yeah, yeah. I like the direct feedback. I don't know if it's really needed.
But at least you know your audio is
like
working.
a safety blanket.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah. And my friend, you met Wayne.
I did meet Wayne. He was telling me how we got you all set up, because in the beginning he was coming and helping.
Yes.
But then he got super busy.
Yes.
He's awesome.
Yeah, he is. So this was all his recommendation. This is what he uses, and he does like mobile production, right? So I've never taken it down and set it up somewhere else, but he does often. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Are you wanting to do more mobile?
Well, I am mobile already.
Okay.
The mics that I have were $50 each, and then they're USB mics that I plug into my PC. And then I found this free, I guess, I don't know, podcast soundboard, because normally a laptop can only accept one microphone when you plug it in direct.
Okay.
So with this, it's called Voice Meter Banana, and it helps my laptop accept both of them.
That's such an awesome name.
They have Voice Meter Banana and Voice Meter Potato. It's cute. And then I link from Voice Meter Banana the sound into Adobe Audition, and that's where I record. Yeah. And so when I'm editing, I go into Adobe Premiere, because then I have my 2 sound files and my 2 video files for my 2 different phones.
And you showed me you have a little add-on, right? Where you basically just, was it just Premiere that cuts everything together?
I have an add-on. You're right. That's new. That's an extension that I got, which was saving me so much time. However.
Oh, not anymore?
Well.
It was so inspiring. I was like, I gotta get on this.
The minute that no, that's still amazing. My problem is I'm new to this, and I got excited with that extension. So I was starting to do episodes every single week, right? And I was shooting in 4K, which means that these are huge storage files, right? Mm-hmm. So what happened was I wasn't transferring the files off my computer. So my CPU was starting to get weaker and weaker and weaker,
and
because
then slower.
Okay. And what it was doing was it was kicking off my microphones. And for the past 5 episodes, I didn't realize that. Okay. And so when I was listening back to the audio after, because I didn't have the mics to hear that I was getting cut off, every other minute it cut out.
Oh gosh.
So then I had to use the sound from my phone, which thank God it picked up, but it's not the same quality, right? Sure. And I just decided to do it for the plot. Yeah. It was such a good interview that I'm just going to wing it. Yeah. You know, I figured out why the videos were cutting off. So
storage.
Yeah. All of this is storage. So if we are live, I don't know if you're keeping this in or not.
Yeah,
oh, okay. Yeah. Well, if you are keeping this in, PSA.
Yeah.
To anyone who is ever wanting to do a podcast, clear your storage on your phone, your camera, and your computer, and then you'll be great. Yeah.
How much editing do you do beyond that plugin?
So for example, if this was my podcast, I would edit out all of this.
Right. Well, okay, so more specifically, how much do you do to change voice levels or edit out potential background noise? Do you do any other than just cutting out segments? Do you do any editing?
When I had my mics working, I didn't have to.
Yeah, cool.
They were so phenomenal at getting. It didn't pick up any background noise. My dog, not my dogs, but my neighbor's dogs downstairs are ruthless.
Yeah, I heard them.
Yeah. But you don't hear them when I do the mic.
Not at all. No.
Yeah. So, I missed that. That between that extension that I got, the AI that automatically filters out who's showing, which is amazing. Yes. It took me 4 to 6 hours, and now it takes me 5 minutes. And I listen. The only editing I do is making sure it starts with, "Hey guys, it's your girl Nechama. And then ending with, let's get it, let's go. And then everything after that I cut out. Anything before the intro I cut out.
Okay.
If some point during the conversation I'm not as organic as you, where like if someone says something and the pause is too long, I'll cut that out to make them look smarter. If they say something where we're just like, God, what is that word? And we just sound really dumb for like 5 minutes, I'll cut that out. And I will also cut out, sometimes I've created a safe space and they share something with me, but then they're like, whoa, I don't want this out to the ether. Yeah. Like, I'm never going to put something out there that will embarrass you. Or sometimes they'll share, like, especially if it's like a girl episode, sometimes we'll share like the guys that we're dating or talking to. And I always cut that out because I'm like, you may think that you're okay with this, but it may come back to bite you, and like, let's just respect privacy here. Yeah.
Okay. Because today is the first episode that I'm recording without having an additional buffer on the mic. So I don't even, do you know what these are called?
Is it like
the things that are right in front of the mic?
I don't know the official name, but I know it stops it from like having a spitting sound.
Right. And then so I had a cover on the mics too before.
Like a fuzzy cover.
Like a fuzzy cover. And it was, I guess it almost felt like they were too sensitive. Anyway, I kept like, and I just have not gotten into the editing. I'm like, so someone suggested like, well, try taking that cover off and seeing if it changes anything, and it does sound sharper. Yeah. Today.
Yeah, we could nerd out about this all day. I don't really have many people I can nerd out to about the tech side of podcasting. So
you seem way more advanced than me. When I saw your setup, I was like, well, especially because you figured out, you added in that AI, so you've saved yourself so much time, which I've also done by outsourcing the production again to someone else.
Right. Well, I'm bougie on a budget, right? So it's like I have no budget. Oh, so that definitely...
You almost had $25,000. Dude, I was so excited for you.
That wasn't for Jew for the Lou, though. That was Jew from the Lou. I can't even remember my own podcast name. That was for my coffee shop.
The coffee shop. Okay.
I know.
They would have been like, no, you can't use it for your...
Here's the thing about that contest. So for context, for anyone who's listening, there was this contest called...
Let's cut in real quick. Okay, and I'll do the intro, and then we'll hop back into
Perfect.
This.
Yeah. I have ADD, so this is fine. Okay, great. This is fine. We'll go wherever.
For everyone listening, welcome back to the Naturally Rosy podcast. My name is Rose. I'm here with none other than Nechama Henderson, host of Jew from the Lou podcast and budding coffeepreneur.
I love it.
Yeah. I worked on that. I practiced that.
It's so cute.
Yeah, and she was recently a part of Forbes Entrepreneur of Impact contest. Was that nationwide?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just a fun example of going for it.
Yeah.
Where it's like...
Yeah, that's like a small tip of the iceberg of what she does. But that's what we're talking about this $25,000.
It was a contest that I saw on Instagram, and as an entrepreneur, sometimes you are strategic and sometimes you take shots in the dark. I tend to be an Aries and have ADD, so I do a lot more shots in the dark than strategy, but my business partner is a Virgo, so that helps to ground things, because Rosie, I know you're a Virgo, so I think you're getting a little sweaty just hearing me talk about just going for things. But yeah, I saw this contest, and I was like, listen, we have everything to gain and nothing to lose, and at the very least, it's exposure. And at the very best, you win $25,000, you get featured in Forbes, and then one of the sharks from Shark Tank, I'm blanking on his name right now, you get to have a one-on-one with him. And then you're in his circle, right? Like, he knows about your existence. Yeah. So I'm like, literally, everything to gain, nothing to lose, right? It was really one of those manifesting moments where I said it and forgot it. Totally. Nice. I forgot that I even entered it. And then one day I got an email, like, I think a month or two later, where it was like, oh, congratulations, you've been selected as one of the participants. Cool. And I was like, I don't know if this is an honor or if anybody who was, entered was chosen, but cool. I filled out my profile page, and then, so basically how the contest worked, it was all based on votes, because it was based on your impact in your community. We're a new coffee shop. My podcast is new, so my impact, I think, is impactful, but it's still growing in terms of accessing community.
Sure.
So, we made it through the first round, which was really exciting. We made it through the second round, got into the top 20, and then the final round we got into was the top 15. But as we were going along, I'm like, one of the things about me is I hate being annoying and being a burden. And it's like all based on votes. And I really hated messaging everyone in my contact list being like, hey, can you go vote? Can you go vote? Like, it's one thing to do it once, but the fact that I was having to do it like every week. And then I was like, oh, by the way, you could also vote every day. Felt annoying. So it's okay. I was, in a weird way, I was low-key relieved when we didn't make it to the next round, because I'm like, if the money is meant for us, we'll get it in a more effortless way where it doesn't feel like we're pushing ourselves on our audience, you know?
Yeah. And I'm tempted to say that, like, it says something about your audience too. I mean, I'm imagining that the people for whom winning a contest by votes would be really easy are people who it's like a lot of online interaction. It's more superficial relationships is what I would guess. And your thing is like more in person and depth. So I feel that, and for me, like, that seems to be a little bit of a longer game too, right? It takes longer to grow a grassroots movement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, than to just go for the cheap, easy, like, let me connect with whoever I can, however I can, right?
Even as a podcaster, right? Like, let's just say, for example, social media is an easy example that people can relate to with numbers of followers. I'm a pretty private person, but being an entrepreneur, I don't have the luxury of being quiet and private. So I've had to learn to just get out there and go after what I want. And so what happened is I've doubled the amount of followers I've had, which I'm so proud of. And then people are like, oh, wow, how many followers do you have? And I'm like, a little over 300.
Yes!
I was so excited.
Yes!
And thank you for the excitement, because most people are like, oh. Because most people who've gone to college, and I didn't have social media until after college, have like over 1,000 followers just on their personal page alone. I was sporting at like 200 on my personal page. And so people hear the word 300 and they're like, from a social media perspective, they're like, oh, that's not so inspiring, right? That's not a huge impact. But I'm like, no. First of all, think about this. If 300 people were in a room and I was giving a live podcast Q&A, that would be so impactful. That's number one. And number two, each one of those followers, for the most part, were handpicked by me. It was like connections, whether super deep or even me just having that like rapport with someone, even just for 5 minutes, being like, hey, by the way, I have a podcast. Do you have Instagram? Open up your phone, follow me. I'm like, I earn those followers, you know?
Yeah.
So.
I feel you. I have just over 300 followers for similar reasons. Only got back on social media after I was like, okay, I don't want this for my personal life, but professionally, it's an asset. It's going to help me reach my professional goals. You know, and at the time it was begrudging. It was like, fine, I guess I'll do this, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's still helpful for me to remember that in times where maybe I start to get a little thrown off my throne by whatever my interactions with social media are, and I'm like, oh wait, Rose, remember, this is literally only for your job. Right? Yeah. Like, this is not for personal use. That's why I don't follow or friend a lot of people, right?
I hope will change, I think. Because for me, I actually was off social media completely for a year before I got back on. And I had no intention of ever going back on social media, period. And I really enjoyed my time off it. Felt a lot of peace. Yeah. But same as you, it was for professional reasons. However, I do enjoy the gram and doom scrolling, and then I found out about TikTok, and so it's definitely part of my life on a personal level now. I can't even ignore that. But I think it's very valuable to go on for personal use as well, because then you start to understand the consumer's mind.
It's true.
And be like, what do they want? Mm-hmm. What are they engaging with? Mm-hmm. And if you think about it just on a very basic level, and I'm going back to my coffee product for a moment here from that perspective, as a consumer, this is how I work on social media. I'll be scrolling, and then all of a sudden I'll get an ad for something, and at first I'll be like, and then I keep scrolling. No interaction whatsoever. If it starts coming on my page again and again and again, eventually maybe I'll start liking it if something resonates with me. Mm-hmm. And then maybe I'll follow that person or that product because I'm like, okay, this has been coming on my page. It's in my vision now. So that's why consistency and, making sure you're posting certain times a week is so important. And then eventually I might even click the link and then follow, And the best example was I did that with Mary Ruth's multivitamins, the liquid multivitamins. I saw it for months. And I finally clicked on it. I thought it was too expensive. But now I use it every day. And it got me. It eventually got me. And it just took that repetitive putting yourself out there. So like as someone who's posting, whether it's your product, your business, your, podcast, people may not engage right away, but if you keep putting yourself out there, they will find you. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. I use social media on a personal level almost solely to send people content or receive content from other people. Not my content, but just like cute videos, like funny videos.
I love that.
Yeah. Yep. Even that though, I'm just not. Yeah, I feel deep purpose in holding space for a slower, steady, more present, organic way of living, and I'm enjoying integrating that in with technology, and I'm really mindful. I don't want to be swept up like into the hyper novelty of fast, like lack of depth. I'm happy that other people are holding that space because it's not for me. And I see, especially in my sessions with my clients, what I'm able to bring because I'm so committed to maintaining that energy of the earth, of being really connected and deep and slow. And also, I've had to learn how to be able to fluctuate my speed so that I can, at least for brief periods of time, resonate with other people who are used to going really fast.
Yep.
Yeah. I'd compare it to like coffee versus like an herbal tea, right? Like I don't drink a lot of coffee.
Okay.
Like haven't drank coffee now in 2 months, and I'm very happy with that.
Okay.
And if I don't have the capacity to keep up with someone who's like had a cup or two of coffee, right, I'm really limiting myself from being able to interact with people. So yeah, does that make sense as a metaphor?
Yeah, and I think it's just a matter of finding your flow and your rhythm. And one thing that I've learned is, especially when you're new at something, there's a lot of stimulation and overload of whatever area you're trying to be successful in. And you're looking at other people, whether they're successful or you like their style. And in the beginning, you don't have the faith in yourself yet. And so I think it's really important to realize that there's not just one way to be successful.
Yeah, for sure.
And that confidence comes with time. And I think it's just really important to listen to your gut. And I've learned that both with my podcast and with my coffee business. But both of those are a wild story how I...
Yeah, I want to know more about that, especially on that, so along the thread of how you learn to listen to your gut, because I'm guessing that happened even before you stepped into entrepreneurship, that contributed to the decision to step into entrepreneurship.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's been a journey that's like a lifelong thing. I would first attribute it to the fact that I'm Jewish and I was raised as an Orthodox Jew. And a big part of our culture and our religion and the school system that I went to was about self-development and introspection, which at the time I didn't realize how rare that was, that during our typical school hours that they were investing in us as people, not just students.
What did that look like? That is so rare.
It is very rare. I think it was like, well, first of all, in Judaism, there is this concept that before you go to sleep at night, you're supposed to do something that's called a cheshbon hanefesh, which I guess the best way to translate it literally would be the audit of the soul.
Cool.
Okay, so like you look back on your day and it's not even about judgment, good or bad, it's just more reflection. And it doesn't have to be a journal. It could just literally be you in bed thinking and be like, okay, well, how did this day go? What was good? What can I improve on? And just this concept of improvement is just so much a part of the core of Judaism. And that got more developed in high school specifically because I would say they trained us to be leaders in terms of the fact that being in Missouri, there's not so many Jews. And on top of that, there's not so many Orthodox Jews. So you are being a representative where people may meet me and I might be the only Jew that they will ever meet in their entire life. So the onus is on me to represent, which comes with a lot of pressure, but also is a tremendous opportunity depending on how you use it. And so in school, specifically more in the Judaic studies, there just was this constant, religion was never something that we were supposed to just swallow and take and do. We were supposed to question and argue and ask those deep, hard questions. Like, I remember, I wouldn't say yelling, but being very heated in class and asking all the hard questions and that being encouraged. And I remember a lot of times us, in high school not wanting to learn, when we would rather just get into deep philosophical conversations, and we would just derail our teachers, and we just knew which topics to ask the teachers, and we would just get into these introspective conversations. We would have workshops. We would have, they actually just did it this weekend. My brother was a chaperone for one of the schools that came in, but every year they would have these like major Shabbatones. So on our Shabbat, they would have small girls' schools from all over the country come in, and we would host, and there would be speakers and workshops and networking events. And like, this is all happening in high school, right? So you're learning how to like meet people and navigate. And a lot of times the school would do things where it's like, let's say the school play, they would on purpose cast the shy, quiet girl as the lead.
Interesting.
On purpose.
Wow.
And like, every single girl was given leadership jobs within the school. You were assigned every year as part of like student council. There was no opportunity to just hide in the corner. They were very specific on like bringing out every single girl. Wow. So there was no one who just coasted, as much as you might try. Then you became the principal's project, and no one liked that. And like, I remember being called into the principal's office if I didn't make A's because I was an A student. And so if I didn't make an A, they knew that was out of character. And so they're like, okay, but what's going on here? And wanting to understand the emotional depth behind that, So.
Wow.
Yeah. It's unique. And I didn't realize it because when you grow up with that, you're like, that's normal, I will say my school was very intense religiously, and I was a very intense person myself, and I always wanted to be the best of the best, and I had a very black and white perspective on what was right and not, which is not the way of the world at all and not who I am anymore. But at the time, I thought there was only one right way to be the perfect Jew. And I thought that meant being as extreme and religious as possible. And I got super, uber religious, like more than necessary, like taking on extra things. To the point where it's like completely isolating myself from the world, if you will, where it's like I didn't listen to non-Jewish music. I didn't watch movies. I didn't have social media. I didn't talk to boys at all in high school, like no messing around, because to me, I was like long-term versus short-term pleasure. I wanted to get married. And I wanted the best guy. And so I didn't want to be ruining my reputation for my future, but also to not dishonor my family. So like I said, a lot of pressure on like a young girl who's just still trying to figure things out. And then everyone in my family, my sister-in-laws, my grandmother, my mom, all were married by like the time they were 21, 22. Ooh. It's very normal in our culture to get married young. I would say part of it is probably tying into your career too, where it's just like we wait for marriage to have sex and to touch, period. So as you can imagine, that speeds up the dating process a lot. And I don't even mean in just like, oh, well, let's rush to have sex and to talk or to touch. It's more about when your focus isn't on sleeping with the person or touching the person, because I think on one hand you have the physical intimacy, then you can focus, because you don't need to touch someone to know you want them. If you're in tune with your gut, and when you don't touch someone, you're even more hyper aware of whether you want them or not, believe it or not. Then you could focus on the spiritual, intellectual, and emotional connection. And if that's all there, plus you know you have that physical attraction, put that together, magic, right? And so that's why I think a lot of times we have the lowest divorce rate. But the problem is finding that right person. And I did not yet. And so what happened was by the time I turned 22, I had this expectation that I would be married or at the very least engaged. And I was nowhere near engaged. And then something in me just snapped where I was like, what was I doing all this for? And somewhere along the way, I had lost my sense of doing it because it was for me and because it was my relationship and my values, and I was doing it to impress others. I was doing it to not dishonor my family. I was doing it to find the perfect husband. I was doing it for the responsibility of representing the Jewish people. It's a lot. And it just burnt me out. And I remember I was working corporate, because to back up a little bit, I've always been ambitious too. And so I graduated high school valedictorian. There was 8 girls in my class, so I like to say I was top 10 on my graduating class. It's my favorite joke. And then most girls go abroad for a year in Israel and study Judaic studies. It's called seminary. My parents couldn't afford that, and I decided to just go straight to college because I was like, I just want to be an adult and make money and be responsible. And I knew I wanted to be a graphic designer because I had taken a course and I've always been artistic. And someone told me, my English principal of my Hebrew principal, I should say, of my elementary school, said I was very talented and I should be a graphic designer. So I was like, okay, never knowing what that was. And then in 11th grade, I took a course. Seemed interesting enough. Back then I was more shy. So I was like, perfect, I could be creative, but then kind of in my own worlds. I got into art school, the Art Institute of St. Louis in St. Charles, which is RIP, no longer in existence. And a month after high school, I started. It was an accelerated program, 3 years to get my bachelor's. And then I accelerated my accelerated program because they announced that they were closing because it was private and funding, whole drama. And so I ended up convincing the dean that since I was doing well, they should let me take an obscene amount of courses. So my whole life was school. And I finished my bachelor's in about 2.5 years.
Wow.
So I was done with college at 20. 2 weeks after my graduation, I got a job, a Fortune 500 company, and working as part of their marketing department doing graphic design. And I worked there for almost 3 years, and then they sold the company. They got acquired by a bigger one. And so marketing department's always the first to be let go. And I got let go, which was a huge shock to me because my whole safety system was gone, right? And then I ended up working for a commercial real estate company as part of their marketing department. Worked there for almost 4 years. It was a mom and pop shop. And it was working with a bunch of like frat-like bros. And considering my background, I learned to really just talk to guys, like be friends with guys and work with them. And that was really good for my character development. But before that, when my first job, religiously, what happened was I had felt so disappointed by the fact that I wasn't anywhere near getting married and just feeling lost and not feeling connected religiously. I remember telling my mom I feel nothing. She was like, okay, you're being dramatic. Are you getting your period? Like, what do you mean you feel nothing? Like, what does that even mean? And I remember it was really cold in the office and I was making myself some tea and I kind of spaced out and I looked down and the hot water that I'd been pouring was going over my hand and I couldn't even feel it. I had gotten to the point where I was so numb that I couldn't even feel physical pain. And I used to think you would be this perfect person to talk to God. And then one day I just had a real conversation, not any specific Hebrew prayers, just talking to God in my car. And I was like, okay, I feel nothing. I need to feel something. I think I should. I was like, can you help me? It would have been so nice if it was like a trickle of feelings. But instead, it was like this huge avalanche of feelings, and I felt so much pain. And that year, I was like, you know what? Forget it. I'm done trying to impress anyone else. This is about my relationship with me and God. Let me repair that first. What's meaningful to me about Judaism, I will do. What's not is a journey. I'll never say never. And then that kind of began my religious introspection of like learning to trust my gut and not listen to others, because I saw what happened when I ignored that. And then I also really grew. So I got to explore, because working in these worlds where I was around people who weren't Jewish and didn't have these expectations, we're like, wait, you're 22, you're 23, you're a baby, you don't need to get married. And I was like, wait, I'm a baby? What? And it was just cool to have that perspective and then learn from other people. And I really grew in that job. And then last November, or 2 Novembers ago, November 2023, I left that job and I went to what seemed like my dream job, working as a senior graphic designer for a package design agency, which was always my dream. But it was just me and my boss, and I had blossomed at that point. I was very social, and it was too hard for me. And I realized I didn't want to be behind the screen anymore, even though I'm good at it. And it wasn't a good fit, and he ended up inevitably letting me go. And I had this post-quarter life crisis. I was 27, almost 28 years old. I've been doing graphic design for 8 years, and I didn't love it, even though I was good at it. So I was like, well, what do I love? Because I'm a big believer that the money will come. What's meant for you is going to come to you. And you have to just think, like, what's going to make me feel alive? Because I lived so long doing what everyone said to do, whether it was religion or career, and life's too short. And so I was like, okay, well, I love people, and I love chit-chatting, and I love coffee. Let me try this coffee thing. And one more caveat to bring it all together, and then I'll let you cut in, because I know I've, like, taken over, was that my job before, when I was working commercial real estate, they gave us a $200 budget for a hobby of our choice. And so, you know, that was their way of saying, we're so sorry, this is a soul-sucking job, and we're never, ever going to give you a raise, but here's $200. Have fun, kid. I went on Amazon and I bought my 2 mics. I figured out, as we were discussing earlier, how to make it work, bougie on a budget. And back then I was making my corporate money. So in the beginning I did have a videographer who I hired. And I think I paid him, I think it was like $200, $250 a video, which is relatively cheap for videography, but was very expensive for me and what I was making. Because I was like, I want to do something with this. And like, it's still been a passion project. It's not something I made money from yet. But for you and for anyone out there who's a podcaster, from my network, what I've learned is, you should try to do a podcast episode a week for consistency. And also, the average podcaster, unless they already are a person of influence, it takes them about 4 to 5 years before they pop off and start really making money. So, don't give up. Be consistent.
Yeah, I wonder if anyone's listening who has their own podcast. I don't know.
I mean, it's totally possible, because I have a podcast, but I'm also a consumer of podcasts.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot to process. I just threw like my whole life story on you. Well, part of it.
Yeah, it's a very rich story. A lot of shedding of layers as you realized you were outgrowing your old self. Yeah. And will you also share about the pivotal moment in the coffee shop?
Which one?
When you were listening to your friend record, when you were in the audience.
Ah, yes. Oh, I'm so glad you know about that, because that was a pivotal moment. So, like I said, this was when I was still working in the commercial real estate job. I had a life coach at the time, who I'm still good friends with to this day, Jeff Lavecchio. Shout out to you. He has an amazing training program. I'm going to do a little plug for him. It's called Train With Me, and his whole brand is Give More, Be More. So everyone should check him out, because it's like $35 a month to train with him, and it's amazing training, so it's a no-brainer. But he and I used to meet in person, and he was a big part of me shedding layers in development as well, because I met him when I was in a really dark place in my life, and I just needed someone to inspire me. And it was supposed to just be him being almost like a trainer, but then he saw that like I wasn't sticking to my goals, and for him it wasn't as black and white as, oh well, you're just not serious. He was like, okay, but why aren't you? What is driving you? What is causing you to self-sabotage? And so then that inevitably just transformed into us being a life coach relationship. And then he had a podcast called the Give More, Be More podcast at the time with the owner of Omen Coffee, Mark. And I think Mark has one of the best coffee in St. Louis. And I was a huge regular of Omen Coffee in the beginning when he first started out. I was there pretty much like once a week at least, because he had done something with that coffee shop which I had never seen before, which there was a bar where you could sit and chit chat with him and the other baristas. So it created this community. He remembered your name. He remembered all about you. So did the baristas. And then he would do these events where you can really have community and meet other people. And he would like, quote unquote, match people who he thought would be like good connections. And he really fostered truly a community. And I had never seen that before. And at a time when I didn't feel connected to my Jewish community, because I'm like, as much as I have so much pride in my Jewish background, I also like needed to distance myself so that I could figure myself out. But we're no man is an island. We need people. And so finding people who were entrepreneurs and who were trying to make it in the fitness world and make it in the world in general was really exciting. And so one of the unique things that they did was they would do these live meetups for their podcast guests. And so the second meetup they did was at Omen Coffee, and I was there with my friends, and they were opening the floor for questions. And for a lot of people, this was their first time ever being on a podcast, including myself, because podcasting seemed like some, I don't know, like being on the radio, like something crazy, like the average person couldn't do it, because my brain just couldn't fathom all the technicalities of how to do it, right? And so everyone was asking questions, and I chose to sit back and not ask questions because I was already friends with Mark. Jeff was my life coach who I met with once a week. So I was like, let me give this space to someone else, because I could always ask my question another time if I have one. But then all of a sudden I kind of had a question based on how the conversation was developing. And they're like, hey, anyone else? Last question. And I was like, you know what? I've always had this belief, and I was taught this in high school. If you have a question, you ask it, because you never know if someone has that same question but is too shy to articulate it, or even if they have this question and they don't even know that they have this question, and got to put it out there. And my question was this: what do you do if you're killing it at your day job, which I was, but it doesn't bring you joy, and you don't know what sets your soul on fire? Because everyone's like, oh, just follow your passion, or work your 9 to 5 and then go home and work your 5 to 9, right? But I didn't even know what that was. I hadn't even started my podcast yet. The coffee shop was a Pinterest board that I thought, oh, maybe I'll do if I marry a rich man and didn't have to worry about making money, because I was so interested in being comfortable. And so Mark answered first, and he said, well, first of all, not everybody has to be the one to pave the path and be a leader. Sometimes you can find someone who has this vision that you really align with, and you could join their team, which is fair advice. And Jeff's advice was, have you ever watched with Jim Carrey the movie Yes Man?
No.
Add it to your list. Within reason, he was dared to say yes to everything for 1 year. And doing so changed his life for better and for worse, And I think I've always had that perspective, because I, like I said, used to be very shy and anxious and introverted. And even if I seemed extroverted to others, that's how I felt internally. And I didn't have that calm comfort in me. So even though people would be like, no, you seem so confident, I didn't feel that way. I felt like I was faking it, because I didn't know who I was, and I didn't feel grounded. And so Yes Man talks about, so Jeff was saying, you should say yes to every opportunity until you figure out what you're looking for. Don't be afraid to try out new things. Don't be afraid to like dip your toe into something, because you never know until you know. And what was so wild about it was that even though my heart was racing so much and my mouth got paper dry from being up there, just holding the mic for 2 seconds, just to ask that question, something happened to me that moment. I call it the magic of the mic, where I've always loved public speaking, even though I get nervous. There's something about it. But even more so, holding that mic, I was like, there's something to this. And then this was like almost 2 years ago, and I actually have it recorded. I could send you the recording if you want to include it in like the links of the time too. If people want to hear me ask the question, because like I didn't listen to the episode for 2 weeks because I was scared to hear my voice, and you could hear that I was shaking because I was so nervous. And it was such a cool experience. I went out to brunch with my friends afterwards. I was like, you guys, I think I'm gonna do a podcast. I think I could do it. And they're like, do it, let's go. So yeah, and what's funny is Mark also was an inspiration to me because he shared with me the roaster that he used, which is the roaster I use for my coffee, which was really cool of him to not hold on to that information too. You know, he believes in collaboration over competition. And then the opportunity to like try new things, and yeah, both the coffee and the podcast were both influenced from that moment. And it didn't happen overnight at all. I think so that podcast episode happened January of 2023, I want to say. And then I was thinking on it. I was doing research. I'm a researcher. I didn't start recording till March of 2023, so it wasn't that much longer, but it was a good 2 months before I acted on it. And I didn't release it to the public until August 31st, 2023, for a few reasons. One, I was naively terrified of becoming viral. And what I mean to say is naively terrified, naive to believe that I would become viral. It happens, I guess, but like usually it happens after years of consistent effort, not just a random video, but you never know. I think I just had so much passion and delusional confidence in what I did that I was like, oh, everyone's gonna love this for sure. But then I was also really nervous on the other hand of, well, what if they don't? Because this is so near and dear to my heart, and my guest stories are so important to me. Because just for reference, my podcast is called Jew from the Lou. It's based on this Hebrew quote, Eze hu chacham halomed mikol adam, which means one who is wise is one who learns from everyone. Because I truly believe we can learn from everyone. And I wanted to give a space, a safe space where people felt confident and comfortable to share their thoughts, their ideas, their stories, or to just shit the shit and just, you know, have fun and chat with me. And I love watching people blossom on camera and have that experience because I know how magical it was for me and I want to share it with others. And I know as it grows, I'm going to get more people who are influential on there, but I still always want to have everyone and anyone on there. My neighbor, my friends, everybody. Because everyone's cool. Just because you don't have an audience doesn't mean you're not someone. Everyone is someone. And so, yeah, I waited, and I wanted to also have a whole library. Because I was like, well, what if, you know, things go wrong? I don't want to feel rushed. Am I going to get enough guests? In the beginning, I did do video from the very beginning, but I was also like, waiting on someone else's timeline, and he was new to doing this as well, so like it was a learning curve for both of us. And then I also was doing it every other week because I'm like, oh well, this is a long format, it's like at least an hour. I want to give people time to consume, to digest, to listen. It really wasn't until maybe about a few months ago that I started doing 1 episode a week.
Yeah, you're finding your rhythm.
Yeah.
Speeding up.
I am speeding up, but, you know, it didn't happen overnight. Like, I've been doing this for over a year, and I've been learning, and, like, just when I think I have it figured out, something goes wrong. Like we were talking about earlier, my mic stopped working, and then I had to learn that, or even mid your video. Like, I lost half your video, you know? The nice thing is I have no one to blame anymore because I'm a one-woman show at this point. But it is a little awkward when you have to say to your guest, hey, remember that awesome episode we did? Well, I fucked up. So, can I curse?
Yeah. Totally.
Okay, cool. So, but you were so sweet about it. And the other guest who I messed up was very sweet about it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's building your character in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's life, right? Like, there's so many unexpected things that you'll never be prepared for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yet, as we experience more and more of those, I found for me that going through dramatic change over and over, which I have from early teenage years, rapidly has helped me shed layers that then helps me get really clear on the core of myself, to where at this point, even if there are other feelings and thoughts above that core, my core is so strong in knowing my resilience.
Yeah.
There's not it's just blown out so much of the insecurity, fear of what other people think, doubt, etc. Again, not that those things don't exist, but they pale in comparison to the resolute knowing of who I am in myself that I discovered through letting go of what other people wanted to put on me, pressures, ideas, thoughts, and doing what, well, like you were talking about, saying yes to opportunities. I love resolving paradoxes, or rather chasing paradoxes that we, at least conceptually, can't ever really resolve. And one of my favorites is recognizing that data and intuition hone each other. So I see in a lot of conversations, a lot of people, oftentimes people, and to some degree we could say this is human nature, that people want to create competition between the yin and the yang sides of life, when we have the possibility to allow them to collaborate with each other and to help hone each other. And there can be an edge of competition per se in that, of like recognizing we're each bringing different things to the table, and I want to do the best I can for me, just like you want to do the best you can for you, and ultimately that gives us even more potential to collaborate.
Yep.
Yeah. But so data and intuition, and then from there, love resolving the paradoxes between science and spirituality, very on par. The more data, the more experience that we add to our repertoire, the more our intuition is able to hone in on what is the right path, what is the right choice for me right now.
Right.
Similarly, or on the opposite end, the more that we choose to say yes to that gut feeling, the more we open ourselves up to new opportunities to gather data that's actually relevant to us.
It's in alignment.
Yeah.
Alignment's a huge word for me. I think I may have done this exercise before you and I recorded our episode, but a friend of mine's very into mindfulness. My friend Angela, shout out to you if you're listening. She's also an entrepreneur, a therapist, soon to be yoga teacher, very cool, very amazing woman, powerhouse. And her business is called the Arcana Collaborative, where it's everything mindful, everything about getting better. You should actually have her on your podcast, because she's also becoming licensed to be a sex therapist. So I think there would be a lot of interesting conversation you guys could have. But she has these events called Mocktails of Mindfulness. And in January, she did this challenge of, for your year, if you can boil your year down to one word as a mission statement, what would it be? We all want to do like vision boards or New Year's resolutions or all these high lofty goals, right? But I loved it because it cut out the bullshit. One word. What comes to mind?
Trust.
I love that. Mine was surrender. And as a recovering type A and an Aries, that is very challenging for me. But something that's very intriguing to me is I love personality tests. And so one of the ones that I took recently, I don't know if you exactly call it a personality test, it's My Human Design.
Oh, yeah.
And so I found out something very intriguing about myself that made sense, but I never knew why it made sense before. See, I always thought I had to put myself out there and push. But I found that the more that I push, the more resistance that I find. Turns out that my manifesting style is I am a passive manifester, which means that for me and my energy, I do best by pouring into my cup. My self-love, being in my authentic truth, making sure that I am the most vibrant version of me. And then everything externally that I want will come to me without me having to open up those doors. And I love that. So if anyone's out there and they're curious, you just go to My Human Design. There's an app, there's a website, and if you're bougie on a budget like me and you don't want to pay the extra amount of money, what you do is your results, when they say, oh, do you want to learn more, just put it into ChatGPT.
Nice.
You'll get the full reading.
Jovian Archive also has a free readout of a person's human design chart.
Oh, really? I'll have to check that out. See, I could literally read this stuff for hours. I'm fascinated.
Yeah. It's cool. I'm reflecting on, I feel like so much of that phase of my life has passed. That there was a phase of my life where human design, numerology, astrology, what was the one I was circling back to the other day? Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins has a personality test.
Does he?
Anyway, all these different ways of self-analyzing.
Yeah, there's a certain point where you gotta be like, okay, step back a little bit. I go through different phases. It is wild, though, because the Myers-Briggs 16 personality tests, I took that in my early 20s, and I was an ENFP at the time, and I just recently took it, and it's changed.
Yeah.
So, personality is not permanent.
Yeah. Yeah, we're changing all the time. All the time. So we're coming into the last 10 minutes of our first half of the conversation. So for those of you who are listening, if you've listened to the podcast before, you'll know this. If you're new, here's the deets that the first half of my conversation with Nechama will be publicly available on my Substack at Naturally Rosie, on Spotify and Apple Podcast at the Naturally Rosie Podcast. After this first half, she and I will take a quick break and then hop back on to record another hour together. The invitation there is that we will maybe step in deeper, more vulnerably, and that second half will then be available only to paid subscribers of the Naturally Rosie Substack. You're also welcome to use a free trial to access that second half of our conversation if you haven't used your free trial yet.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
The one, I should do that.
I got that idea totally, all the credit to the Higher Side Chats podcast with Greg Carlwood, one of my favorite podcasts like 5-6 years ago. Fascinating topics, and he has the super cool play for the intro. That's a play on the Fireside Chats that President Roosevelt used to do. But it's the Higher Side Chats. So
that's cute.
Everything from spirituality to mindfulness to creating your own reality to conspiracy theories, delving in deep. And he does that for his, or at least did do that for his episodes, is cut them in half, have long conversations, cut them in half. Second half is available to paid subscribers.
That's brilliant. See, I was like, I know the paid subscribers thing is definitely a way to go to make more money, because, I mean, we love passion projects, but gotta pay the bills too.
Yeah.
And I always was like, either gonna wait till I reach a certain amount of followers and then start doing subscription-based, or I was like, keep the guest ones free and then do personal ones, just my thoughts, and that would be for subscribers only.
Yeah, love
There's
that.
so many ways to do it, right?
So many ways. Yeah. Yeah, there's something I'll share. I'll wait till the second half of this.
Yeah.
If you want to know what I'm going to share.
Subscribe.
Yeah, right. was on, oh my gosh, he's the best. He kept being like, he kept cutting in because I'm like, it's a cup of coffee. It's $5.55 a month, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And Wayne's like, yeah, you cheap motherfuckers.
I love Wayne. He's so funny.
Have y'all recorded yet?
No, I was sick.
Right.
So we weren't able to meet for like weeks. And then he's so sweet because he like messaged me. He's like, are you feeling better? And I'm like, yeah, I'm so sorry that I like forgot about you. But we just met last week for coffee. Was it last week? I don't even know. I have no concept of time. That's the other thing. I don't forget about people intentionally. I just have no concept of time. But yeah, no, we have it on the calendar. We are meeting whenever it is on my Google calendar. If it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist because I have no brain for time. So
Nice. Okay, 5 more minutes approximately.
Okay.
What do you want to share with the people?
With the public people,
Mm-hmm.
I want to share that you are never late for your own life. So no matter where you're at, whether I'm 28, Rosie's 29. For some people, they may think we're old as can be. Some people may think we're so young and wish they started 20 years ago. But no matter where you're at, you always should take steps. Maybe you're not going to leap, but like taking those steps, you'll be surprised. Organically, things add up. People come into your life, like things go into alignment. Like if you are meant for something, you should trust that gut instinct. And to end my 5 minutes, I will say my favorite quote by Zig Ziglar, which is, if you have an idea for a product or a business, it is your moral obligation to make it a reality. So on the nights, and by the way, as an entrepreneur, you're not always confident. I can't tell you how many times I've questioned my life choices and thought about going and getting a big girl job again. And I've cried myself to sleep. And I just always remember I have a moral obligation because I'm obsessed with Kabbalah. We'll talk about more on that.
Cool.
In the private part of the subscription side. But yeah, I'm a big believer in spirituality and Kabbalah. And I'm a big believer that the fulfillment comes before the desire. So if you have a desire for something, there's a reason for it. It's your moral obligation to make it a reality, and just start wherever you can.
You are the only one who's come up with that specific, unique idea.
Yep. And even if there's other people doing something similar, I saw this recently, they can take your recipe, but it won't taste the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it. Your soul's unique.
Yes. Beautiful. Awesome. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. To all you listening, spend some time outside today. Give yourself a hug and keep laughing.
Love.
Life's too short.
Let's go.